Hello everybody, and welcome back to the FlightFactor 777 version 2 feature guide series. It's been a while since I've made one of these videos, over a year in fact, and a lot of things have changed in that time period. First off, I am happy to say that this is the first video I'm making since the 777 version 2 is considered a full release. Now what does that mean? It means that there will always be a stable version to roll back to in case there's an issue with the aircraft. For example, I'm currently in version 2.2.1. This is a beta, but if I have any issues, I can always go to Xupdater, uncheck the beta box, and go back to version 2.2.0 in this case, which is the last stable release. In the past, this was not an option, and you had to wait for the devs to publish a hotfix, which they did pretty quickly. But now you don't have to wait. You can just go to the Xupdater, unclick that beta box. What this also means is that from here on out, the feature guide series won't be outdated as quickly as it once was. For example, the EFB video that I first did is vastly different from the EFB we have now. And so that video needs a complete rework. However, from now, we won't have to do that as much. So the videos you see from now on will be more accurate to the aircraft. So today's video will be going over some 3D visuals in the aircraft and associated features, specifically the walkaround feature, the aircraft configuration feature, which not only affects the visuals in the aircraft, but also your weight and balance and some procedures. And I'll also go over some modeling quirks, some modeling things, implementations that I think are worth highlighting, just as a feature guide, or a feature reveal. Before we get started, I do want to say that, first off, this is a FlightFactor specific video, so features like the walkaround may be in other aircraft, they may be implemented differently, or they may not be there at all. And so take this as specific to the 777 version 2. Next up, we also have to say that this is my knowledge from testing. These videos are based on personal experiences I've had with the aircraft, and so I may miss some things. If there's anything I missed, or something you think should be changed, feel free to write in the comments and I'll take a look, and I'm more than happy to make new videos. And finally, I do want to say I am still running on a laptop. This is a better laptop than my last one. However, please do not take this video as some sort of performance benchmark for your own experiences, because especially if you're running on a desktop, you will have better performance than me. In fact, I am in a different scenery right now because it is less heavy on the frame rate. Now, without further ado, let's get into the cockpit. Let's start with the walkaround feature, because I think this is something that really speaks to the depth of this aircraft. The walkaround feature can be found, as always, in your EFB. For now, I'm going to pop out the EFB just so it's faster. However, I will stow it back. I will be using this physical EFB once we are done talking about the walkaround. Now, the walkaround feature can be found in the airplane tab and this walkaround tab. And once you get in here, like, there's a lot to unpack. first off, there is this aircraft diagram. This is a diagram of the 777 pictured from the underside. So imagine you're lying on the ground and the aircraft is above you, or you're standing on the ground and the aircraft is flying overhead. That's what this diagram is. So from that perspective, the right side of the screen is actually the left side of the aircraft, and the left side of the screen is the right side of the aircraft. When you first start up the aircraft, you will start on the left side of the aircraft, and I'm not sure why that is, but that is how it is right now. Aside from this, you also have all of these checkboxes. These are checkboxes for different parts of the aircraft you should check during your walk around. And these don't really affect the overall systems of the aircraft. What I mean by that is that if you leave one checkbox checked, another one unchecked, it's not gonna warn you here on the iCast or anything. You can really do flights without having to deal with the walk-around feature at all. Aside from this, you also have these two buttons in the bottom left. This is the check all and reset all button. And what this does, it does exactly what it says about the checkboxes. If you check all, it's going to check all of your boxes. If you reset all, then it's going to reset everything. And this is purely just for tracking your walk around. Now, let's get to what I think is the core of the walk around feature, which are these two buttons to the right of every checkbox. You have a smaller one in the top right corner and a larger one in the bottom right corner. Now, I'm going to talk about the bottom right button first because it controls your camera. So what I mean by that is if you click this bottom right button, it will bring your camera to the place you're supposed to be when you're checking that part of the aircraft. So if I go to the forward equipment door and click this, my camera will go to the forward equipment door. And it does not teleport you. Rather, the camera takes the human pathways to get to that area. And the reason I mention that is that sometimes this camera can be disorienting, and I really prefer to use other cameras, as we will talk about later. So let's go to the forward equipment door by clicking this bottom right button. And so you can already see that this camera is slightly disorienting. Some parts it speeds up and it can be nauseating. Now we're at the forward equipment door, which brings us to what I think is the best part about the walk around, which is this top right button. What this does is it explains what you're supposed to look for during the walk around in this specific part. And it does so orally, but it also shows up in your subtitles, so it will be affected by the subtitle settings you set. So for the forward equipment door, let's find out what we have to do by clicking the top right button.
Confirm that the forward equipment center access door is closed and latched. Look for visible damage on the radome.
And there we go. We're supposed to confirm that the forward access door is closed latched and make sure there's no significant damage on the radome. Let's check this area and check off our box and move on to forward gear lock pin. Now I won't go through the full walk around in this video because it's very tedious. I will, however, talk about some things that you should note in order to make the walk around faster, and also some click spots that might show up. Anyways, let's go to the forward gear lock pin and find out what we need.
Examine the hydraulic actuation for leaks. Make sure that the gear lock pin is not installed.
Okay, looks like there's no significant leaks, and there is no gear lock pin installed, so that's good. And finally, let's just go to the probes on the right hand side, just so that we don't have to do the full walk around. What we need for the probes:
check the two pitot probes, the ice detector probe, and the angle of attach vane.
Okay, so check the pitot probes, the ice detector probe, and the angle of attack vane. And yeah, these are fine. But that brings me to some of the other ways. I won't necessarily say faster, some of them are faster, but not all of them. So some of the other ways you can do a walk around are, for example, you can go back to the cockpit and manually move the camera. So if I wanted to manually move the camera to the location, it could work like that. So let's just go over to the probes. You don't have to follow any human pathways if you don't want to. And you see the same thing. Aside from that, you can also use an external camera. So let's take this chase camera, go over to the same location, and you will see the same thing. Finally, you can also use your free camera, so press C, and you can just move the camera a little faster. The reason I give these alternatives is, first off, so it's not nauseating all the time, but also because a lot of the things you see during the walk around are modeled regardless of the camera. So for example, if I want to go to airplane, let's say fail the AOA, the angle of attack vane. If I fail this right one, you'll see that the right angle of attack vane is now bent. It doesn't matter which camera I use. I don't have to use the walk around camera because it's going to show up regardless. And so this can really speed up your flow or just make the whole experience much more enjoyable if you don't use the walk around camera. However, there are some things that only show up in certain cameras. For example, I won't use the walk around camera, but I will just go through an internal camera. And the reason I do this is because Clickspots in this aircraft do not show up on external cameras. So for example, this cargo door, you can see there are latches open. So there's a lower one you can close the cargo door through this latch. And then you can close the latch. You can open this latch, open this, and open the cargo door. And these do not show up on the external cameras. So if I go to an external camera, say the chase camera, you will see that there's no click spot. I can't click it. But this does bring me to the next part of this video, where we talk about the aircraft configuration. So aircraft configuration can be brought up from menu, so this is the main menu, simulation, and airplane configuration. In this tab, you'll see that there is an option for cabin configuration and cargo hold configuration. I'm going to go to cargo hold configuration for now because that's where we're at. And in this, you will see quite a few options. First off, you have forward freeload, aft freeload, 96-inch pallets, and LD3 containers. These are different things you can place in the cargo hold. So, for example, if I click forward freeload, this is just going to be loose baggage you can place in the cargo hold. And that changes not only some of the visuals as you load the aircraft, but also how you load the aircraft and some of the weights involved. I'll go back to the cockpit for this because the EFB pop-out does not let you scroll. And let's add some 96-inch pallets. Let's just do 2-3. And if you go into cargo loading, you'll see that it now looks a little different. This forward freeload section now has its own slider, which wouldn't be there if it were pallets or containers. You can manipulate this through like any other slider in the EFB. You can scroll up, increase it, just like any other. However, the buttons here are now so that the upper button increases the load. So if you click upper, if you click up, it's going to be increase how much cargo you're taking. If you click the lower button, it's going to decrease. I want to highlight that because I know it's possible to read it as the left button and right button, and in that case it wouldn't make sense, but think of it as an upper button and a lower button in this scenario. So, for free place luggage, this allows you to set specific weights for your cargo. Whereas with pallets, it's just how many pallets are you taking. They have a set weight, and you can't be as granular. It's similar to, it's kind of like a midpoint between bulk cargo and pallets containers. And you will notice that a lot of these changes do show up when you load the aircraft. So for example, let's call the ground crew. So for now, let's just go to, which one is it? Loader forward and loader aft.
Some equipment.
Which one?
Forward luggage loader.
And
Got it. Can I help you with anything else?
I think we'll also call it.
Any other requests?
I think
Not
we're good.
at this time.
Okay. So that is the cargo configuration. That brings us to the cabin configuration. And this is where I think the 777 really shines, because it allows you to set different cabins based on which aircraft you're flying. So if you click the cabin configuration, you have all these options. You have a cabin type, first class, business class, and economy class. Now, I know that you can't scroll on the pop-out. However, I will pop it out because I think it will better demonstrate how dynamic this is. So we're in the cabin right now. And if I want more first class seats, for example, I can just increase how many first class seats I have. If I want more business class, I can basically make the entire aircraft business class. And the same thing goes if I want more economy seats. I can make this a budget airline. I can make this anything I want. I could just remove business class entirely as well. Remember that this not only changes the aircraft visually, but it also changes your passenger weight and balance. So, for example, we don't have any business class seats on this aircraft. And so, if you go into passenger loading, you'll see that business class is just grayed out. You can't increase the amount of people you want to load. However, you can for the other two. Now, before we move on, I do want to talk about this cabin type. Think of cabin type as a sort of mix between modeling and presets. So for example, if you have a single class cabin, if you click this, it makes everything economy and blocks out all of your granular options. If you want a two class cabin, it blocks out first class and allows you to change between business class and economy class. However, yeah, it just allows you to change everything. If you want a 3-class cabin, you can change how many first class, how many business class, and economy class. However, do note that in the 3-class cabin, the first class seats are a little different. The reason for that is that the 777 version 2 has 2 models of the first class seats. At least right now. You can switch between this by going to either Emirates style, which brings you back to the suites, or Turkish Airlines, which has these non-suite first class. And also note that for first class only, it's limited between the front doors and the second row doors. Anyways, that's enough of the configuration, so let's go and load the cargo just to see how it is. I will go to simulation and just change the physical time factor just to make it a little faster. There we go. Now let's go to loading service and load the cargo.
You may load the cargo holds.
As soon as possible.
Now, you will notice that the cargo in the 777 version 2 visually loads as the aircraft does. So you can see containers being loaded. I know that we set it to freeload, but that's kind of how it's modeled. The front is always going to be containers. However, in the back, you can see there are pallets being loaded on. Note that these cargo visuals do not show up, at least last time I checked, when you have the time factor set to instantaneous. And that is the cargo loading. There we go. More containers. Anyways, this brings us to the final part of this video, which is some of the modeling quirks and features that I found. So let's go to the cabin real quick. This is by all intents, kind of a cabin tour. However, please note that these are not default textures. There are a lot of things in this cabin. If you want to go to the toilet lavatories, those are modeled. And if you click the flush button, a flushing sound will play. So the aircraft is flyable, yes. You also have your galleys. And you also have these different cabins. Notice how there are no overhead bins for the first class cabin, just to add a bit more space for those passengers. Now let's go to this lavatory. Most of the lavatories are openable. They're all explorable, with the exception of the 2 center ones in the back. The 2 center ones in the back are not explorable. Now, aside from the lavatories, we also have this crew rest. This is in the economy cabin, or just the rear-ish cabin. The second to last bulkhead, or pillar. And when you click this, you can see that you have stairs going up, and the crew rest is modeled. I also want to talk about another feature, which is the door lock. So you go to Simulation, Equipment and Structure, and you'll see this cockpit door code is 1455. We can change that code, let's say 3124 then. Let's open the door. once we get out of the cockpit, you'll notice that if I switch this, the indicator light switches, close it, and clicking, it won't open. However, if I input 3, 1, 2, 4, enter, you'll see that their indicator light changes, and you can open the door. And so, yeah, you can change how this cockpit door code works. And finally, for the internal modeling, I do want to say that the oxygen masks do deploy. So if you go to passenger oxygen, click this, it goes on, and if we unlock the door, go into the cabin, you will notice that the masks do indeed deploy. So this goes for first class, also goes for business class, just everyone in the aircraft. Now, that should be it for the internals of this aircraft for now. There are things I want to show outside the aircraft. So, for example, there are things that can be found in the maintenance tab. And if we go to the EFB, go to airplane maintenance, you'll notice that there's this hatch inspection. In the hatch inspection, you have all of these hatches that you can open. It's like the Walkaround feature, however, the buttons don't really do much. The camera one does work, but you know, you're not going to get any explanations. However, these checkboxes now will open the hatches. And so you can take a look in the radar dome, you can open the hatches for the cargo doors, you can open the potable water doors, ground AC doors, ground pneumatics, and just all of these doors. And a particularly interesting one that I found that's, I think it's pretty cool, is a gear release door, which is this one. And when you go into this and click this, you can open the gear on the ground. And you'll see just a bunch of details that I think are cool. There's also this indicator light that shows up when the gear is moving. Notice that there are also things that are not listed here. For example, the engine cowlings are not listed in this hatch inspection. For that, you would have to do a engine maintenance, and when you reset engine cycles, for example, that's when the engine cowling will open. But enough about that. The last thing I do want to cover in this video concerns emergency related stuff. So we've been through the oxygen masks, which, by the way, you do also have oxygen masks that work here. Yes? But you also have emergency ropes that only show up when the window is fully open. So once this window is open, you can click the emergency rope and deploy it. This is visible from the outside. You can see the rope. But more importantly, you also have emergency slides. So let's go into that. And there are a few ways to deploy the slides. First off, you have Clickspots in the cabin. You can arm, disarm, and then arm again the doors. And when you have the doors armed, open it, you're gonna see the slide deploy. However, you can also go into airplane doors. You can have these doors set to automatic as you would. And once those are set to automatic, you can have
Hello?
emergency.
We are all here and ready.
There we go. You can have this button, emergency operations. So let's go to manual.
Doors to manual.
Yes, sir. All disarmed and checked.
And go back to automatic.
Doors to automatic.
No. Some of the doors are open.
Okay.
Arm what I can.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Will do
So
as you ask.
let's arm those doors. And you'll see that these are locked. These are grayed out. And in order to unlock them for purposes of slide deployment, you do have to
Sir.
declare an emergency. So declare emergency, declare emergency. It's the same
There are
button.
no emergency operations.
Yes.
And once you have an emergency declared, you'll see that these doors are now available, though they do have a red sign, a red symbol. And so if you open these doors,
We need that door open.
Undoubtedly.
the slides will
Fine.
deploy.
Gladly.
And let's just deploy 2 again.
We need that door open.
Certainly.
There we go. And those are a lot of the modeling features that are in this aircraft. I hope you've all enjoyed this video. I hope it's helped. And please leave any comments for any improvements you think I can make. And aside from that, thank you for watching this video. And I will see you all in the next one.